All right, so I'm going to get a little vulnerable today, and I'm a little nervous about it, so stick with me. All right, so my confession is that in my last year of graduate school in my clinical psychology PhD program, which was year 7, by the way, I was randomly called into a meeting with my advisor and the department head. Now, I didn't have any idea what this was about, maybe some admin thing, but I don't know, maybe it's not good since the department head was there. Well, they told me that I had plagiarized my master's paper. I was so taken aback. I was so frozen. I didn't know what they were talking about. It was, by the way, it was like 4 10-page papers that you had to write in over 2 weekends. It was a great experience. I had done all of my research. I cited all my sources. I didn't plagiarize. Like, what were they talking about? I did everything right. But I was a biology major in undergrad, and I memorized a lot of things. I didn't write so many papers before being in graduate school. And I learned from this experience that not putting quotation marks around something or not rewording it is apparently plagiarism. So they kicked me out of my PhD program because I didn't use quotation marks in my citations. 7 years. 7 years of clinical psychology training, done. 1 meeting, that's it. I walked out of that building. I don't know, I was kind of frozen. I got into my car and I didn't know what to do. What do you say to people? You know, I didn't steal anything. I wasn't cheating. I just didn't know about a rule that everybody else knew about. And then in that moment, everything that I worked so hard for was just done. It was over. I thought my life was over. And that's really how it felt to me at that time, because that was my identity. That was my whole plan. I had a picture of who I was supposed to become. And I was in that program for 7 years. 7 years, training, clinical hours, papers, but I can't even tell you, but building towards this specific version of my future. And in 1 hour, it was gone. And later, people would ask me, oh, like, tell me, you studied psychology, but you're not doing that. Like, what's going on? Let me give them the condensed version and then really just like change the topic. And, I got really good at saying a version of the story that was technically true. Oh yeah, I studied psychology, then I became a nurse, I did some research, and then I started my business. That was true, but it was not the whole story. I left out the part where I got kicked out of my psychology program because that part felt like, obviously, like I felt like a failure. I knew that it wasn't malicious. I knew it was an honest mistake on my part. And I really felt, and my advisor, by the way, felt that the outcome was not proportionate to what I did, but it was still really shameful. I felt like I had done something wrong, like it was embarrassing, and that said something about me. And so I didn't tell people about it for a decade. And unsurprisingly, when you don't talk about these things, you keep them in, they become heavier than they need to be. And, it carries more weight than when you just say it. Because when you tell it, it's a story. When you hide it, now that becomes your identity. And I wasn't hiding the story of getting kicked out of graduate school. I was hiding the version of myself who failed at my PhD program. And now I really want to pause on this because I'm relating it back to you, because I'm not unusual in this. I think so many of us are carrying a version of ourselves that, things didn't work out as planned. And we're hiding that. We're carrying that and making it mean so much. Maybe, something that you did with a client went sideways. Maybe you had a launch that failed. You had an offer that didn't work out, that really terrible client situation that went badly, a path that was tried and then abandoned. And when we hide that, or still really forcing that to work because we've already invested so much into it, when you let go, then it really feels like defeat. It feels like a failure, like something went wrong. And what I realized eventually, it took me years, was that I wasn't grieving graduate school. I was grieving the version of myself that I thought that I was supposed to become. I thought that was my path, right? That was my career. That's what my life was supposed to look like. And that version of my life required me to be Dr. Andrea, clinical psychologist, doing the thing that I have been working towards since my mid-20s. And when that was just taken away from me, I just assumed everything else disappeared with it. My chance at making good income, my chance at having a good life, because I attached my identity so tightly to that outcome that it was so hard for me to see what else was out there. But what I still had was 7 years of learning how to read people, of how to understand, what somebody is saying underneath what they're actually saying, how to sit with someone in discomfort without trying to immediately fix it, how to know that the problem someone tells me might not actually be the true root problem that they're experiencing. And those skills did not disappear and my plan disappeared. They just needed somewhere else to live. And so, yes, I became a nurse. I worked in hospitals for a couple of years, moved into clinical trials research, closer to the things that I like doing. And through it all, I was using everything I learned in my clinical psychology training, just differently than I had planned. And what I couldn't have predicted at that time was that all of it, the training, the nursing, the research, everything would eventually become the foundation of a whole different kind of work that I would do from a new country, from Spain, in my apartment with my dogs next to me, in my slippers, and never any hard pants. And that life, my life that I live now, it didn't come from the plan I had. It came from the wreckage of it, the total destruction of this plan. And I truly believe, and not as a business lesson per se, but as something that I know in my soul and in my body, that losing that plan really was a really good thing that happened to me. And no, not because hard things are secretly blessings in disguise. That's cliche. But because I stopped building my life around who I thought that I was supposed to be. And then I was given the freedom to build my life around who I actually was. So why am I sharing this on a business podcast, and how does this relate to you? I will tell you, because I see this pattern, this clinging on to an identity that doesn't fit any longer, this building towards something that you think is what success looks like, that maybe is not coming from within you, that not being able to let go of something that maybe is not working because of the fear of failing, and that being so scary. And so holding on to something so tightly instead of experimenting and trying new things. I see that so often in the work that I do with my clients, with my VAs and OBMs, because a lot of times when I talk to people, they think they have a boundaries problem, or they have a pricing problem, or a visibility problem. And sometimes, yeah, they do. That's part of it. But a surprising amount of times, it's something deeper. Like they're building their business around who they were 2 years ago and not who they are now. Or they're building, this business around a vision that they see people on Instagram promoting, or like in their community, or in, programs that they're in. Like, oh, this is what success looks like. And this is the next step in your business. Right. And they stopped ever asking about, well, is this aligned with me? Is this what I want? And that's one of the reasons that my one-on-one coaching program expansion starts where it does. I don't start with, talking about pricing and offers and marketing. No, I start with you and your life and the things that you want. Because I have learned, both from my own experience and from years of working with people who are in this industry, this done-for-you service provider industry, that strategy works a lot better when it's authentic to you, when it's aligned with who you are. Because if you're building a business around, let's say, the version of who you were when you first started and you've outgrown that, no amount of tweaking your offers or your boundaries or pricing or anything is going to fix that friction. And I'll give you an example, a client example. When we first started together, she had a goal, right? She said, and I've talked about this before because it's a really poignant example. She said, I want an agency. I want to scale, bring on a team. That's how I do it. Great. Smart goal, right? Fabulous. Let's do that. I didn't, fight her on it because at that point I didn't know what she wanted. I didn't know what was a good fit, what was aligned to her authentically. So when we started working on this, we started peeling back the layers, looking at the things that energized her, what drains her, what, she's amazing at all of these different things. Something else started to come up, and it wasn't this catch-all agency that she thought that she wanted. what she actually felt aligned with, what was really authentic to her and how she worked, and what supported the life that she wanted, was having this very focused operations-led practice. So she's the strategist, the person doing the high-level thinking, and she's right now doing the implementation, but later she can hire somebody, one person, not 15, right, to do that implementation. And this distinction might seem small, but it really is the difference in spending all day doing things that you love doing versus feeling like, oh, this is the path that I need to go down because that's what the next step is, period. Not my next step, but the next step. And she had talked about that now she feels like she has direction and not pressure. And I think it's 129. But don't quote me on that. I do have a recent podcast episode that is titled exactly that, where I go deeper into this story. So you can check that out if this resonates with you. And so what can you take from this, right? So the test for you is not, is this a good business idea or will it make money? But does this feel like direction? Am I being pulled towards something, not pressure like I'm being pushed towards it? Because when you are building something that you feel excited about, that feels like it comes from you really, really genuinely, authentically, it creates this amazing energy and it doesn't feel hard. Even though it's work, it feels exciting and you want to keep going. And that comes across in everything that you do. So it makes everything flow so much easier. But when you're building towards some random version of success as somebody just kind of told you that's what it was, or that you felt like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, it feels like pushing. Right? There's some like friction there. You feel like, okay, like almost like you're convincing yourself that this is the right thing to do. So you're working hard and the momentum feels kind of stalled. And so another example of this is another client who had been in business before we started working together for 4 years. Right? So she's doing the work, amazing, had this business, and she was building towards, the obvious, quote unquote, next step. And she was exhausted. She was on the cusp of burnout and it wasn't great for her. Right? And because she was forcing herself into being a certain type of business owner that didn't fit her. So same process, right? So we stopped trying to force her into the plan she was working on and created one that was built around what she wanted to be known for. And with this new energy, things shifted in her. And so figuring out this piece is when she started getting excited about her business again for the first time in 4 years. 4 years. And now she was excited about it. And now she was seeing success in her business and the way that she wanted to see it. And I tell you that to tell you that it is never too late to pivot, to make some shifts in your business. So that way it is more aligned with you and not just what the people, the internet, whatever, is telling you should be doing. And so practically, I also want you to take something away from this, because I don't want it to sound like I'm just saying, blow up your business and start over, right? I'm not saying that at all. Building from within yourself outwardly doesn't mean abandoning everything that you built. It means really being introspective and getting honest about, does my business fit me? Does it support the life that I want? And does it support where I want to go? And it starts with a question that I ask my clients often at our first time together. So, and I invite you to ask yourself this as well. What would your business look like if you built it around the life that you want instead of the goals that you thought you were supposed to have? Right? We don't care about sounding impressive. We don't care about what makes the most sense. We don't care about what's trendy. We don't care about a certain income month because that somehow means success for some weird reason. We care about your life. For me, it was moving abroad, right? And being able to start work later in the afternoon and things like this. What is it for you? What do you want your random Tuesday to feel like? What feels like an extension of you instead of something that you are now dreading the same way you dreaded your 9 to 5? And when you figure this out, things shift really fast because now you have so much clarity. I've had clients restructure contracts for their clients and how they work together within weeks of making this shift. And they feel a difference, both in their income and their energy and how they show up to their business. Some other things take a little bit longer. This identity work, the unlearning that you're doing. This is a slower process of getting comfortable charging for things that maybe you gave away for free, or maybe charging more than what you were doing before, or turning down work that doesn't fit you anymore, that doesn't feel aligned. These things can take a little bit of time, but it's like strength training. Like for me, I recently started a progressive overlord. No, that's not the word. Weightlifting. I don't remember what it's called, whatever. I'm doing a weightlifting program, and it is so scientific and it's based on research and so intentional. And they absolutely do not promise me that I'm going to get, my abs back, or whatever in like a month. The work compounds. They tell me it's going to take 3 to 4 months to see any changes. And I know that. And I said, great. I'm here. I'm putting in the work. I understand why. And I am happy because it's going to be long-lasting change. And so this is just an example that things don't happen overnight, right? The point is that when you are building a foundation that is authentically you, you're no longer pushing a boulder up a hill. Now you're moving in a direction that makes sense, and you have a structure to support that. And so if anything in this episode resonated with you and you want to create this aligned, structured space to do this type of reflection and take this a bit further, I have a free resource called the Slow Morning Studio, and it is at dancingleafsolutions.com/slow-morning-studio. It is a 5-day email practice, and each day you have a 5-minute exercise that's designed to help you create more space and to think about the structure of your business. So now you get to think about you and not everyone else's opinions and advice and all that noise that takes over. So this is linked in the show notes below, and I'm excited for you to check this out. And with that, my vulnerability moment is over. I really hope that you got something out of this, and I will see you in the next episode. That's a wrap on today's episode, and thank you so much for listening. If anything we talked about today made you think, okay, well, what does this actually look like in my business? That's exactly what a free business audit is for. In just 45 minutes, I'll help you identify your unstructured expertise, pinpoint what's keeping you capped, and map out what your signature method could look like. There's a link in the show notes to grab your spot, and I will see you in the next episode.